I have kind of anxiety for time. Like seriously, um, I think I'm super afraid that I will never be able to do everything that I want in life, and I think that might be typical for creative people.
I think it is typical for creative people. I mean, I still feel that way, and I'm a bit older than you are, but I don't take it as seriously as I used to. I know I can't do everything, which I didn't know until, you know, a few years ago. Uh, and I know some things are more worth doing than others.
Hmm.
And so I think that'll go away in time, but don't worry about it. It's actually a motivator. It just means that you're creative. The creative part of your brain wants you to be using it all the time as much as possible because it's got great stuff to offer the world and it doesn't want to go away without having fulfilled its promise to itself. And so I like the fact that you have that feeling because it's a positive sign about the prognosis of your creativity.
It definitely forces me to look at the way I spend time, for sure, without a doubt, and spend my time better and not wasting time. So in that sense, it's a blessing. But it's also frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but that's okay. You can live with frustration. I mean, if you're not frustrated, you're not doing anything important anyway.
Mm,
Frustration is the natural condition of the creative life.
it's a good point, and I guess to kind of build on that, feeling these negative emotions in a way. I've also always wondered if if what creates artists is trauma and pain, just kind of like comedians. I think comedians oftentimes will compensate something that has happened to them in their childhood and joke around and make fun. Do you think that's kind of the same way with artists? That artists have to experience some sort of trauma or pain for their art to be good?
There's a famous book called The Drama of the Gifted Child that basically says that art comes out of trauma, childhood trauma,
Can't or
and
can?
that it does,
Okay, okay.
that is the natural spring of art. I'm not sure I totally believe that. I can't disprove it, but there's something to it for sure. That something's got to be rattling around in your brain that makes you want to create something. And when you think about creation, is really order and chaos. It's making order out of chaos, and it operates on trivial levels. Like I always think it's funny that as the week goes by, my office floor is filled with paper, and the first thing I do on the weekend is I start picking the paper up and filing it. But I like the feeling of being, surrounded by all these projects and in partial garb, and just kind of in the middle of a mess because it's very satisfying to clean the mess up
Mm.
and to put order to it. And that's what happens when you're working on a novel or a screenplay or, a symphony is you got all this stuff floating through your head and your your task is to stand there with a baton and bring order to it, and that's a natural feeling. So to the extent that your childhood was chaotic and things were out of your control, I can see that as a real motivator to seek the control that artistic expression brings you. It's a way of bringing order to your life, which is control. And when you think about the whole universe out there, it's a great big challenge that people try to control. And you're not sure whether it cares about control or not. You wonder, when asteroids hit the moon and all kinds of stuff seems to be random. But all the more reason that humans like to bring control to their lives. And when you think about it, if you create a great play or a great, novel, you've made a statement kind of against the chaos of the universe. You've put it all together into something that makes sense. And one of our great drives as humans is the belief that things make sense and the attempt to prove it. Um, that becomes truer and truer every day as our world becomes more and more chaotic. I think it will lead to great masterpieces if we survive the present,
Hmm.
the present chaos.
Yeah, I've always found that so interesting, and I've heard musicians purposely try to stay in painful situations because it just enhances their art. It,
Yeah, I think it's in my first book about writing and creativity, A Writer's Time. I talk about the fact that the more you understand your process, the less you need pain and suffering. And I kind of divide productive writers into two groups, happy ones and unhappy ones. And when I start studying those two groups, I see that the unhappy ones are almost to a person ones that did not ever, never did understood their process. So they often end in tragedy, like Hemingway or Sylvia Plath or Virginia Woolf, you know, artists who commit suicide. Sometimes they just do it, like Janis Joplin, with drugs, and you know, there's myriad examples. But when people start understanding their process, they don't need to inflict pain on themselves as much. And there is a process to creativity that is a natural process. It's followed by all creative people, whether they're aware of it or not. And once I learned that, I started understanding that I'm not sure suffering really is the generator of creativity. I think that it's a natural part of the brain.